Alright guys, so today I'm talking up to this point. I've taken out the plastic bucket seat from the car. This guy here, I think this was just like an EMPI high back plastic bucket seat with the vinyl cover. It's worked up to this point, but like I said previously, I sat on it, not in it, so it's kind of an upgrade, especially trying to go a little bit quicker and be a little bit safer. I've moved up to the Kirkey 55 series seat, and those seem to be kind of what everyone uses for drag racing. And you know, if they work, they work. I've sat in one in Robbie's truck, and it's a lot more secure, that's for sure. They give you a bit more bolstering on the side, so let me show you it instead of just talking about it. Slide over here. So that's what she looks like in the car. Not too bad of a fit. Currently I have it sitting on the basic bracket that I've been using previously, but I gotta drill holes through the bottom of the seat in 4 points to mount it. And I also have some hardware and spacers to securely mount the seat. These seats, apparently you can tip them a little bit back and a little bit forward to get the angle just right, depending on your preference. I'm probably going to try and have it angled basically straight up and down rather than having it tipped back. For me personally, I prefer that. And I'm going to achieve that goal with some spacers. Just some plastic. I guess they use these for sprint cars, and if they're good enough for those, they're probably good enough for this. They're just some really hard plastic spacers that you put under the seat. In this instance, I'm probably going to put a 1 inch on the rear and then a 1/2 inch, or stack it with a 1/2 inch and 1 1/4 in the front, just to have it to where it's tipped forward. And then eventually I'm going to try and set this up to where a bar might be able to go down this way along the door. Try and give it, I think, mild steel, we were talking about it. Mild steel is 1 5/8 bar for the door bar if you want to make it legal. So I'm going to try and make sure there's at least a 1 5/8 gap right here. Preferably a little bit more, because odds are the bar isn't going to be perfectly straight. And I also got to space it a little bit away from the trans tunnel, because over in that corner you might see that it gets pretty close to the trans tunnel. So I don't necessarily want it to be smacking that while it's just sitting here. Would it be in the world? Probably not, but I'd prefer it to be not hitting anything while it's at rest. And then eventually, once I put a roll bar in and actually have a rear harness bar, they make a support for the back of these seats that you can rest against a bar, and it supports the back of it. And then also you can put your harnesses through and have a full 5-point. And for me, luckily, this seat drops the seating position quite a bit, so I can sit lower in the car, not having to worry about smacking my helmet on the roof or against the bar once it gets installed someday. So let's get to it. Take this seat out, show you guys what I'm working with as far as the bracket wise. I had this sort of mocked up the other day just to see what it might look like. So beneath it is just a basic bracket that I've modified already. I've actually shortened this previously, and shouldn't be too much harder to drill holes. These I think are 11 by 12 centers, So once I figure out one hole where I want the seat to be, I can then just measure for the other 4 and keep it square and bolt it down with the spacers. Alright, so we've got the first hole marked on here. Right now it's looking like this spot right here, just ahead of this first bend, is going to be the spot to drill the center of the first hole on. And then from there, once I get that hole drilled, I can put it back in the car and sort of set the angle of how the seat wants to be. I'm going to drill these holes probably 7/16. I couldn't find 3/8 hardware, which is what I was originally using, which is what the bracket's meant for 7/16 anyway. So I'm using 10mm hardware, which is a hair snugger, or a hair more snug. And the bracket I know is 12" by 11". I forgot which way, I'll have to double check. I can just measure for the other 3. I'm gonna try and count for the spacers, because the spacers will set it at a slightly different angle. So the hole will be either pushed back or pushed forward depending on which side I'm looking at. But for now, we're starting with this first hole and we're gonna drill it to 7/16. And then I have some really big fender washers to hold this together, and then the bracket's just a big, I think it's probably 1/8" or 3/16 thick tab coming off the bracket itself, and the bracket itself is held down with 7/16 hardware, so all of that should be very secure once it's all in. But I'm glad I was able to get the seat to sit more flat rather than angled with the spacer, so that makes me significantly happier with the way this fits in the car, and also for getting in and out of the car. Because of this big bolster along the side, it actually makes it more difficult to get in and out of the car. So I'm gonna have to make sure I'm able to get in and out really quickly, so I'll be making sure I'm able to do that. If not, I might have to really try and make a quick disconnect fit this time. That was the original point of that video a few videos back now, was to set up for this, but that quick disconnect didn't work. So I might just have to get a universal one and weld one onto the column. But that's another story for another time. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. So let me start drilling this first hole and we'll get back into it. Gonna have to get the cone bit, unfortunately. Let me go grab it. Not a fan of using the old cone bit, but whatever. Gotta do what you gotta do. Let's see if I can find a 7/16 bit somewhere. Okay, so we got the first hole drilled here. Do a better job on that on the next one. This is our stack of hardware we got. We got a grade 10.9 metric bolt, 10mm washer, standard 10mm washer underneath that. Then a big fender washer to sort of hold more meat or more material of the seat itself. It'll go through the seat first, then one of these spacers. Then we'll have another washer, lock washer, and then a nut. And that should be pretty secure. Eventually I might switch these out to nylocks, but so far I've had really good luck with the lock washer and washer combo. I mean, nothing even came loose on that plastic bucket seat, and I think I installed that once I first got the car. That was a long time ago now, and none of the hardware even moved. So this should be more rigid, so it might see more vibration, so it might need a nylock, but for now this should be fine. And eventually, if I need to, I'll switch to standard hardware. That way I'm not messing with metric and standard. I mean, it's not the end of the world, but it would be nice to have it all be one style of bolt rather than a mix match between the car of standard and metric and Allen and whatever else I got going on, just to keep it all going one way. So let's get this first bolt through and get this thing started to get mocked up. Had to go through and drill these plastic spacers out too. They're like they're a 3/8 hole, but on the inside, I don't know what they do to them, but there's like a heavy lip that the bolt would go like halfway and then the threads would just stop. And then this thing also has a shoulder to it, so, you know, rather than mess around with trying to thread this through the plastic, just drilled these out to 1/2 inch, that way I have some wiggle room, and then just throw it in there. So I'll reset you guys in the door, and I'll start putting this seat in and see if we can get that second hole located. Alright, so got the seat in, made sure that it sits the way I like it to. Shooting straight forward, it seems to be perfect. I was double checking where that door bar gap might be with this measuring tape. And I measured the bracket, and it's 12 inches from center to center on that back section for the mount. So what we're going to do is measure from this bend down to the center of this hole and square that up, and then measure 12 inches across and get our second center hole. And from there, these two holes should be parallel and straight relative to the seat, and then those will then bolt directly to the bracket, which should already be parallel and square to which way I want to be facing in the car. So we'll get that knocked out and move forward. So from the end of the bend to the center of the hole, we're looking at about 1.5 inches. So this is just going to be an arbitrary line over here somewhat. We'll just measure center to center. About 12 inches would be there. And then from there, we'll measure down 1.5 inches, and we're going based off of the center, or off the end of that bend, so you can kind of see it in the video. Let me pull it up here. That, depending on how the light, oh yeah, the light actually illustrates it perfectly. So you can see right here where it's silver, and then right here where it gets extra shiny is where the bend is, where the center of that bend is. So I'm measuring off the very edge of that bend towards the bottom, towards the flat side, and then going 1.5 inches down. And then once I get a straight edge and I go 12 inches across, that should let me know, hey, that's parallel to this line. That's my natural straight edge off the seat, and then using a straight edge off of the center of this hole to here, letting me know that this is about 1.5 inches down, 12 inches, should make that a parallel line to this line, therefore keeping it all straight. So let me go find a straight edge and we will move forward. Off of this, we can see that where I marked the center of my hole to where I marked that dot arbitrarily, we're running right through the center of it. And we know that's straight because I already marked off of here 1.5 inches straight down. Therefore, that should be very, very close to our true measurement that we're shooting for. So what we'll do to verify that, get the tape out, put our straight edge on, get that centered to the center of the hole and the center of that mark. And if we go based off the we'll go based off the 2-foot mark on here. Is not ideal with one person and also not on a flat surface. So we are very close to that 12-inch mark right there. So all I'm going to do now is triple check my downward measurement off the bend. Yep. And then since we are drilling the holes a little bit bigger than what's needed, we'll have a little bit of wiggle room. If it's slightly cocked or off sideways, I can always shimmy it just a touch. This hole was a bit crude just because I didn't expect the cone bit to eat through that like a hot knife through butter. This one will be a little bit tighter, therefore making it all a little bit more tight when I go to get the other two measurements for the front. So give me 1 second to get a drill bit and we'll get that rolling. Take it easy. Alright, we're good there. Okay. Let's stab these through, see what it looks like. Okay. Up to this point, I've got these two bolts installed relatively close to where I think they're going to live. And then I went to go put this third hole in here, and I was just going to use a 1/4 inch spacer. So these two back here are 1 inch, and this is a 1/4 inch spacer. And you know, who would have thought? Turns out you can't use the same hardware for both of those because you don't need the same length of hardware. So, I had to make a quick detour over to the hardware store. I just had this. Needed one of these guys, at least something that's threaded all the way down. So, now we should have enough engagement from the bolt and enough thread to tighten that down and get an idea of what this is going to look like in the end. If I could find the rest of the hardware I just had, that would be very helpful. Okay, here it is. This is just for mock-up, so I'm just throwing the nut on the bolt without a lock washer for now. Alright, so that's about what she's going to look like. We've got from the tightest point, which is the corner of the seat, angle it down so you guys can see it. So the corner of this seat right here to this area, we're looking at about 1 3/4 of an inch. So if we really need to, I'll dent this door card in just because I don't have a door card, and also there's one not there to begin with, so should have a decent amount of space there. And it looks really low right now, but once we put the seat cover in, that should raise it about another inch and a half and get us to where we want to be sitting. So let me get this final bolt hole drilled in here. All I did for this third one right here was I just sort of eyeballed this one up to here. I know that from here to here is supposed to be an 11-inch spread, so I just took my tape, went from there to there, stuck my hand down there, sort of felt around to where I think it should be, and guesstimated, drilled a pilot hole, and I got lucky. I did. So now I should be able to throw in the fourth hole, vacuum all this stuff out. I might just vacuum it right now anyway, and then we should be good. Then I'll try getting in it and getting it out. That's going to be the hard part. So far for this fourth hole, did the same thing again, sort of eyeballed it from here to here, here to here. So from this bend line, we're going down about 1 1/4, which would be about the center of this bolt that I already have in the front. Just measured it down to here, 12 inches across, which should be the center of these guys. So 1 1/4 down, 12 inches. Throw a pilot hole in there. I'm really close. Like I said, I'm drilling these holes kind of big. That way I have some wiggle room. So what we're doing now, drilling this guy out to 3/8. Alright, this will be our first permanent bolt. Shouldn't be coming back out after the fact. All I'm going to do now is go through, take all the hardware back out, make sure I put a lock washer and a washer underneath everything. And then we'll go through and tighten everything up. Feels all nice and snug. You can see the seat flexing, but I'm also moving the whole car, so it's pretty tight, pretty solid. So this did sort of end up being a mess as far as getting the actual seat itself. I ordered the seat and seat cover from Jegs originally, but unfortunately with everything everywhere it goes nowadays, they had a back order and it was supposed to ship out, and then it got pushed back again, and I don't want to get too close to duct tape and barely get the seat in, or you know, try and get it done in a hurry. So I ended up picking up a Kirkey seat from another spot, and I tested the Jeg seat cover on it because they had that in stock, so they shipped that to me. The Jeg seat cover fits almost spot on. I'd say the only difference is 2 snaps, and for me that's not that critical personally. I don't see it being a safety issue at all because those 2 snaps where they are, it doesn't matter. And then there's a snap at the bottom in the middle that I guess the Kirkey seat has, or no, that the Jeg seat has, the Kirkey seat doesn't. I'm not too concerned with that, honestly. So let's throw this cover on, take a seat, see if we can get out. That's the other hurdle. Oh yeah, we're cooking. Yep. Got a room there, room here. Steering wheel's good, and I can see over there cleaner. Originally, when I tested this seat in here, I was looking basically just above the steering wheel. I would say my chin was probably as high as the steering wheel. So now that we're with the spacers and the seat cover, it puts me in a much better position to actually see everything going down, so we're good. Adjust the steering wheel a touch, or the mirror, so we can see stuff. That's solid. That's a race car now. And now I'm actually in the car, not on the car. That plastic seat, man, it was killing me every time. You'd sit on it, not in it, so you didn't feel, it'd be like really unstable if you're turning. So now if I'm turning, it's a lot more solid. That's nice. Shifter's still in a good spot relative to the seat. Steering wheel's still nice. Hold the button. Let go. Try not to shift because of all the torque. Well, let me know if there's anything you guys want to see on the next video. If I did anything wrong, give me a heads up. I probably won't fix it, but at least I'll know I did it wrong. See you guys at Duct Tape Drags.